is Hani Ashomala. I welcome you all to the Oriental Orthodox Day. We are very blessed to have so many churches from our sister Orthodox churches, and we are very blessed to have a very important figure today who is very well known in the Orthodox community, and I would like to ask him to introduce yourself. Father, we are very happy to have you. If you can please introduce yourself.
I'm Father Daniel Findikyan. Excuse me. I'm the Dean of St. Nersess Armenian Seminary in New Rochelle, New York.
Okay. So happy to have you here today with us. Father, can you give us your flavor of the day and what do you think and what's your expectations?
I must say I am overwhelmed by what I'm seeing here. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of young people, Oriental Orthodox. Obviously, most of them are your Coptic Orthodox children. I am overwhelmed. I feel that the Holy Spirit is at work here among you, but also I'm enormously privileged. I feel very honored to be here with you. It's a blessing for me to be here, a part of this, and to see other Orthodox, Oriental Orthodox young people also joining in with this.
Looks like the Pentecost is happening again.
It is indeed. I believe that. I do believe that.
Father, you led the Armenian youth to come in. How many people you expect from your church are here?
I must say I don't expect too many young people today, largely because we're not used to, frankly, something on this scale. But more than that, we are, unfortunately, we're only now getting used to the idea. We're now beginning this idea of working together with our sister churches. So a lot of our Armenian young people they're good young people. They don't know who the Coptic Orthodox are. They don't know the Syrian Orthodox. And so I believe that we need to start with not being so concerned about the numbers. I think we'll have maybe a dozen or a couple of dozen, I hope. But we have to work as clergy, as leaders of workers and servants for our young people. We have to work to bring these young people together, let them make friends with each other, let them build relationships, and then they will be much more likely to come together in events like this. So it's a process, I think, and we have to be patient. But I've seen some of our young people here. I'm excited about that, and I'm sure that as time goes by, more and more of them will join in.
You will be speaking later on today. Can you give us a flavor of what you will be talking about?
Well, what I'd like to talk about, my field of specialization is the liturgy of the churches. And so one of the things that I'd like to talk about today is how miraculously we as sister churches can be completely in communion with each other. We are truly brothers and sisters in the very closest sense of that phrase. As an Armenian Orthodox priest, I can go into a Coptic Orthodox church and I will be welcomed. I'll be welcomed at the altar to assist with the liturgy, and this is reciprocal. This is a wonderful, wonderful grace that's been given to us by God. And yet, what is curious and ironic is that we are, though completely unified, we are different in many, many ways in our Christian expression, our cultural expression, unified in our essential theology. We are very different in our customs, and this is a remarkable phenomenon that needs to be discussed, needs to be analyzed and well understood, because it's a gift of God.
This channel, the CYC, is well seen by many, many youth all over the diaspora. Many of the youth in all over the countries don't know, can we marry with each other? Ethiopian, Armenian. Can you please give a word about that?
Absolutely they can. I know in places like Egypt, where there had been for almost 1,000 years, there's been a strong Armenian community, welcomed and very much at home. In some ways, guarding and preserving their own identity, but very much comfortable among the Coptic Orthodox. And there have been cases of intermarriage. I wouldn't say it's something that's been widespread, but certainly something that has never been frowned upon, something that has always been considered acceptable. Personally, in a place like the United States of America, I would not be surprised by that phenomenon, or troubled, frankly, in any way at all.
Father, I don't want to keep you longer. I'm sure we'll meet again. I'm so blessed to have you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
How our churches organize time. All of the feasts and the fasts. Now, all of us celebrate Christmas. All of our churches celebrate Easter. All of us have a special day for the Mother of God. All of our churches have a special day for the cross. All of us have Pentecost and Ascension. These are the basics that come right out of the Bible. But not all of us have feasts for the dedication of the church. Not all of us have commemorations for certain feasts that may or may not be known to each one of us. Some of us, our churches, have special feasts. Not all of us celebrate Easter on the same day. Not all of us celebrate Christmas on the same day. So even such a fundamental thing as when we celebrate feasts, or what those feasts even are, is constitutive of the rite of the church and its reflection and its expression of its faith. All right? All of us are fasting. In all of our churches now, we're in the pre-Christmas fasting period. Another one that we may not think about is the lectionary. Right? A lectionary is an English word that refers to the system of dividing up the Bible so that little pieces of it are read every day. Each one of our rites, the rites of our churches, does this in a different day. The Armenian Church, the Armenian Rite, has a lectionary. There are certain readings that we read today on this day, right? And those readings are not exactly the same as the ones that are being read in the Syrian Orthodox Church, according to the West Syrian lectionary, or the Ethiopian Rite, or the Coptic Rite. They're all different. So in the genius of each rite, of each church, the Bible is divided up and parceled out and spread out over the church year in different ways in order to communicate something specific about that church's understanding, ultimately, of the gospel, ultimately, of the message of salvation of Jesus Christ. And we all do that in different ways, and each one is rich and beautiful. And all of our churches have unique customs and rites that are really unique, that don't exist anywhere else. In the Coptic Orthodox Church, much of the liturgical activity over the year is linked historically to the seasons of the rising and the flooding of the Nile River. Right? Scholars have studied that. Now, when the Nile floods or doesn't flood is of absolutely zero relevance for an Armenian, unless it's an Armenian who lives in Cairo, for example. And there have been Armenians, and there are Armenians in Cairo. But an Armenian in historical Armenia or in East Brunswick, New Jersey, could care less about when the Nile floods. If you're an Egyptian Christian, though, you need to know when the Nile is flooding, because that's the water that's going to nourish you and give life to your people for another year, particularly in pre-modern times. It's a matter of life and death. And it didn't take long for Egyptians, when they became Christian, to recognize that the rising and the flooding of the Nile is the work of God's hand. God's hand. And God works in response and collaboration with his people. And therefore his people, at least in Egypt, need to be aware of that. For the Syrian Orthodox in India, it's the same thing. In India, it's a completely different climate, a completely different world, where the gospel was brought and where it flowered and took root. And so our Indian Orthodox brothers and sisters, you have wonderful, unique customs that are unknown anywhere else in Christendom, unknown among any other Eastern rite, and unknown to the other Oriental Orthodox churches, which, however, are beautiful and are life-giving, and that are preserved and celebrated and lived by you. So these are perhaps the most interesting components of our rites, which express for us how we believe and how we know God. Rites work like languages. I keep talking about this inner logic. Here are some languages. They happen to be Christian languages: Armenian, Syriac, and Georgian. The Georgian Orthodox are one of the Eastern Orthodox churches, but their language is an ancient one. All these languages function very differently. The Armenian language, for example, is unique. It's an ancient language. It has absolutely no gender. The Armenian language is a language that has absolutely no gender. There is no way in Armenian to distinguish between he and she. There is no such thing. It's a sign of the antiquity of the language. It's one of the original Indo-European languages. I'm just giving you one example. Now, if you're a native English speaker, you say, wait a minute, how do you get through 15-minute conversation with anybody without being able to say, he said this, and then I told her, and then she said that? How do you do that? Ask the Armenians. We've been doing this for thousands of years. There's a way to do it. It's the inner logic of the language. We're able to do it. The language is evolved in such a way that we are allowed to do that. By the way, this takes out all questions about which bothers modern Protestants, for example. A lot of modern Christians, they're worried because we refer to God as He. And they say, oh, wait a minute, God is not man and God is not woman. So why does the Bible say refer to God as He? It's a legitimate question. We Armenians scratch our heads and say, well, what's the big, what are you talking about? God is God, and you are you, and I am me, and that's all there is. There is no he or she. We have no problem with this. So if we want to be inclusive in our language and politically correct, you all have to learn Armenian. That's the solution. So the Syriac is a Semitic language like Arabic and Hebrew and Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke. It's a purely Christian language at its roots. It is the native Christian language of our Syrian Orthodox brothers and sisters and of our Malankara brothers and sisters as well. It is the language of their right. Now, as a Semitic language, verbs don't work the way they work for a language like English. There's no way to distinguish clearly about something that will take place in the future and something that already took place in the past. Much less to say, when I had already started my job, I went to work. That's two past tenses. I can do that in English. I had already started my job. Then I received my first paycheck before going and contemplating how I would spend my money after I left work. Right? There's like 8 tenses there. English can do that. In Semitic languages like Syriac, all you can do is say, it's done or it's not done. That's it. There's no future tense. There's no past tense. There's no real current, present tense the way we understand it. In English, there are 3 present tenses. Do you know this? I walk. I am walking. I do walk. 3 present tenses. In Semitic, it's just an action that is not yet complete. Go figure. How do you have a conversation in a language like that? The answer is, it's part of the inner logic of that language. And people have been speaking Arabic. Jesus spoke Aramaic with no difficulty and was able to express the nuances of what he needed to do. Finally, a language like Georgian has no passive. You can't say the door opened. You can't say that. That's a passive tense. She was struck with the emotion, with the joy of the moment. That's passive tense. You can't say that. There's no way to do that in Georgian. How do you do that? I don't go ask a Georgian. I don't speak Georgian. So languages work, all do the same thing. They communicate ideas, but they do it in bizarrely different ways. And liturgical rites are exactly the same. All liturgical rites are intended to communicate our faith and to celebrate the mystery of our faith, which is Jesus Christ, the Son of God, present, alive, loving us in our midst, driving us to the extent that we open ourselves up and simply say, come and be with me. That's what all liturgical rites do. They provide the tools, the means, the language to celebrate that and express that ever-deepening awareness of God's love for us and our, hopefully, increasing awareness of our own love for God in one another. The farther back we go in time, the more diversity there is. And as time goes by, there is a gradual unification. So today we have 7 liturgical rites in the Christian East that survive. 500 years ago, there were many more than that. And I tried to show you this in a kind of this is really a diagrammatic way. So at the bottom of the slide, you have, originally there was an Antiochian rite, there was a West Syrian rite, there was an Alexandrian rite, there was the rite of Edessa and Georgia and Ethiopia and Nubia, a country that no longer even exists. East Syrian, Armenian, Byzantine, Cyprian, the rite of the island of Cyprus. We know there was a liturgical rite there. Coptic, Caesarean, Maronite, and so forth. Within a couple of hundred years, a few hundred years, as time goes by, some of these assimilate. And we could talk about how that happens. It's kind of interesting. They assimilate. Smaller rites in small villages kind of get overtaken by the liturgical rite of a nearby big city. Until today, we are left with 7 liturgical rites. And 500 years from now, if there are any human beings left on planet Earth, there might be less than that, if history continues the way it always has. I want to close with one of my favorite quotations anywhere, which is by my teacher, Father Robert Taft, who's probably the greatest historian and theologian and specialist in liturgy working in the world today. He's a Jesuit priest. He's a Byzantine Catholic in his worship, and an enormously erudite, brilliant man, and a very holy man, I believe, as well. He wrote this in one of his lectures, and if you want the reference, I'll give it to you. The key to the heart of the Christian East is its liturgy. The key to the heart of the Christian East is its liturgy. It is only through the liturgy that Scripture, tradition, the Fathers, piety, spirituality, everything is transmitted and lived. Sometimes this expression of a living faith can become sclerotic. You're all pre-meds. Hardened, like hardening of the arteries, like stony, it just kind of comes dead a little bit. Can become sclerotic, overgrown, too heavy. But underneath the overgrowth of centuries lie the jewels of a people's incarnation of the gospel, waiting to be uncovered by someone willing to cut back the brush. I cannot imagine a more fitting, immensely rewarding ministry than to study the heritage of a people. And in the East, that heritage is conserved and transmitted through the liturgy in order to uncover its riches for the good of that same people and for all peoples, to the unending glory of God's eternal name. My brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ, this says, as clearly as I ever could, and much more succinctly and beautifully, this says what we are called to do. You and I here today, on this day, in this church, in this place, have been brought together by God to come to know ourselves as Orthodox, Oriental Orthodox Christians within our own churches, to whom we will always remain faithful. Our gathering, our purpose here is not to say that you don't need to be Coptic anymore and you don't need to be Armenian. Let's just be Americans and Oriental Orthodox. It's not the purpose. This designation, Oriental Orthodox, is not meant to supersede or to sort of assimilate all of our member churches. Not at all. We are intended first and foremost to know ourselves as Coptic Orthodox, as Syrian Orthodox, as Armenian Orthodox, right? And to know ourselves through our own rites, through our own liturgies and worship traditions. And then to be able to communicate that, express that, and share that with one another. Because when we do that, when we share the love of God, which is ultimately what these rites are, they are our people's expressions of God's love for us and his salvation for each one of us. We come to know God a whole lot better, and we share that with other people. We come to know God even better in and through each other. And if you're an Eastern Orthodox, you can't do that. If you're an Eastern Orthodox, what I'm telling you today doesn't make sense. Because to be an Eastern Orthodox means to be a member of one and the same rite. Now, there are many blessings that come with that. And I'm not here to judge or criticize or in any way put that down. What I'm saying is that we as Oriental Orthodox are different. You are the ones that will do this. There was no Oriental Orthodox youth when I was growing up. There was no such thing. If I had told my parents, oh, I'm going to go visit the Coptic Orthodox, where are you going? Who are those people? I don't know who they are. Who are they? Right? Right? I mean, some of your parents may say that. I don't know. But today, that shouldn't be the case. And it isn't. So you are the ones. And I'm going to say another thing. All of our churches have their own challenges and divisions. Every single one of them. Right? And you are the ones that will be the ones to overcome those and to build the bridges to overcome those divisions and schisms and problems that are there, that neither you nor I caused. but that are there and that are real. And the way that we will create that unity and that reconciliation is not because you and I have pretty faces or pray enough, but because we are willing to take the risks and have the guts to know and to invest ourselves in the love of God in Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ is the only one from whom unity comes and from whom reconciliation comes. In anything, whether that's the Arab Spring in the Middle East, or whether that's the political mess in Washington right now, or whether it's problems within the Syrian Orthodox Church or the Armenian Orthodox Church. The medicine toward unity is the love of Jesus Christ. And you and I are called to know that and to dig and to root ourselves more deeply in that. And my prayer today and tomorrow and going forward will be that God will give you the grace and the knowledge and the largeness of heart to be able to possess and to know the love that God has for you, to be able to begin to make those good things happen by the grace of God. God bless you all. Thank you for inviting me.
I want to say there are traditions in the Orthodox Church. I've run into this situation where some people feel, I say, why don't you take communion? Oh, I'm not worthy. Okay, so what do we need to do about this? What's happening with you? And so on and so on. And we go through the conversation. And I say, well, it's Lent time. How are you handling the fasting? Oh, I'm fasting. I'm watching. I'm only eating the fasting food, and in my prayer life and all that. And I say to them, I said, well, okay. I said, well, you're not partaking of the body and blood of Christ. How can you fast without partaking of the body and blood of Christ? That's the reason why you empty your stomach so many days. It's the one time when you take communion all the time. It's the one time when you're quiet. It's the one time when that's what your body is for, And I remind the people, and I want to remind you all, that, you were made a human being so that you can worship God, not that you can impress your friends or obtain the things of this world. All the things of this world are one day going to be in a trash heap somewhere. All the things you're going to get credit for and go into debt for are eventually going to go into a trash heap. That's what everything, the landfills are full of them. They're full of all of the Lamborghinis and fur coats. They're all in landfills somewhere, from 150 years ago. So nobody wants them anymore. People already went in debt for them, died working for them, and they end up in landfills and they die sinners, because they sacrificed everything for that, for just basically junk. It's just basically junk. It looks nice now, these iPods and everything. It looks nice now, the houses and the careers, but it's really going nowhere. We're eternal. The church is eternal. That's why your spirit leaves your body to do what? To go to eternity. It's going to leave this time frame, and it's going to be where the church is. As a community of Orthodox Christians, you have to realize that eternal situation, and I want to get a sense of everybody's understanding of that. Let's talk a bit about that. Let's talk about how the Orthodox Church differs from the unity of those who profess Christ as God. If the communion is the faith, right? And the person who's in the fasting situation, not taking communion, what is the sense of Christ? What is the sense of salvation? He keeps saying that I have to be prepared to receive the body and blood of Christ. Well, you're never going to get ready. There are even people who believes, and I have to say, and they have this belief that because I'm young and like your age, let's say, I'm a sinner and I'm doing bad things. So because of my age, and I can't take communion until maybe I'm 70. So by the time I get 70, I'm back to purity again. I go from baby, being innocent, then I went from being innocent to being this whole bad section. Then I get to 70, and then I'm good again, And then now I can take communion at those two ends, at the beginning of my life and at the end of my life. But the whole giant piece in between is nothing. This is the teaching of the devil. Okay, you can teach that to anybody you want. That's exactly what it is, because that's not the teaching of the church. Our fathers don't teach that. What we teach is this, is that we have to be united in Christ. Christ said to us, anyone who does not partake of my body and blood has what?
Has no place in you?
No part. You know what no part means? The part that you think you have with him, you don't have that either. That's what it means.
The first verse is commemorating all the Orthodox fathers and doctors of the church. And the second verse is recalling the tale of the conversion of Saul and how he was sent out as Paul to baptize and change the world. And so we will be singing that song in 2 verses. Orthodoxo vishwasam nishidamai sabitoram ignatios agnimayen jnanam navatevo logos malluravagam kurilos kanjana jivan marivanios marbesil Grigorios mardias coros climis marviraxinos ul Christian severios ider meladaden matan ormadinangal aghoshichidam varuvin shaulaken Paulos ekyan sapren marinum vangi kartavin shishen mare bendi pan pogum neram shabdam melke tan shaule pidipikkum enne endenuni kartave നീയാരെന്നും പേരെന്തെന്നും ചോദിച്ചാൻ മോറാൻ ഉല ചെയ്താൻ ഞാൻ